Item 2 is going to be changed somewhat. It has to do with the question of additional funding for construction package 1 for a change order. I think we want to put that in context, and we'll probably end up deferring the vote on that particular item. So, Mr. Flens, would you like to open this conversation?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I just wanted to put in context the next agenda item, and that is that there's been, for some time, dating back to 2016, some discussion within the board through its documents, like the business plan, that there's been some cost pressures, and particularly in the Central Valley. And in early 2017, the High-Speed Rail Authority, working with its contract partner, WSP, formerly Parsons Brinckerhoff, has been looking to update the costs for the program, including the Central Valley. And what WSP did as one of the initial steps in that is to bring in a global high-speed rail expert, and that is our Chief Program Director, Roy Hill, who had been working in the past on HS2, a high-speed train system in England that I'm sure many of you have heard about. And so since he came on board in the spring of 2017, Roy has put a team together of various RDP members, or Rail Delivery Partner, or WSP members, as well as state staff, and has put together these cost estimates. So what I'm going to do now is introduce Mr. Hill, Roy Hill, and he's going to go through a 2-slide presentation to show a cost comparison between the cost to complete the Central Valley piece of our program from what was shown in the funding plan, the Central Valley funding plan that gained access to the Prop 1A funds, and what the new estimate is. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon. This is the 4th time I've carried out one of these cost estimate baseline updates. This is the first one on high-speed rail here. I can say I am very pleased that it was an integrated team of authority members and RDP staff. We undertook it over a 3-month period, which in some ways is a short period, but given what has happened on the project to date, it has allowed us to have a comprehensive review. So this is related to the estimate for the Central Valley only. It is a number of items which were really looked at from a top-down approach, but also, given the experience, the work undertaken, it allows us to go from a bottom-up approach with the estimates and numbers and quantities. So we've established this update for the Central Valley. We are comparing it with the funding plan that was established earlier. The funding plan, you will see, split out into a number of component parts. For clarity, the CP1, CP23, CP4 line items are project numbers, not contract numbers. So please, there's a distinction between the project of CP1 geographical area compared to CP1 design build contract. So that's what those numbers relate to. You will see an increase for CP1, CP23, CP4 stayed the same. The numbers, preliminary engineering, etc., that line item was included in the numbers in the funding plan above, but in this situation we have pulled them out to make sure that we can better manage them and identify them. And below those numbers there are a number of what we call route-wide items, track systems, and that number is increased from 1.9 billion to 2.5 billion in the current estimate to complete. Heavy maintenance facility stays the same, northern extension added, and therefore the final numbers for the Central Valley funding plan was 7.8 billion. Currently the estimate as of today, we're saying for the Central Valley sector is 10.6. The number includes contingency. Previously was 923 million, almost a billion in the funding plan, and we have identified a further 600 million for the project at this stage of completion. It is lower, obviously, because we've had a number of years of work completed, designed, developed, understood the issues, and that's why we have only a further 600 million, I say only, but relative to the percentages, that's what we've included. What are the drivers for these? This increase is 2.8 billion increase. They are categorized, and the main ones are the following. Railway related, this is where we got close to the railway line and had to construct and will be constructing intrusion barriers to protect the current freight railways with our high-speed rail, and that took up 450 million. Right away, I know it's been a discussion topic at numerous meetings, and that falls into two categories. One is acquisition, the increase of 400 million there, and that's not only additional parcels that have had to be purchased, but also the increased cost of those parcels when we've purchased them versus the budget originally. But then there's also the protracted access or achievement of achieving those parcels, access to those parcels. We've estimated a delay impact to the contracts of 325 million. Third-party related costs, this is what I call stakeholder agreements, and there's been a numerous number of those, but basically you can see the types of things that we've come to agreement with local communities, cities, etc., and therefore we've had to reflect a new number, and that is 250. Third-party relocations, this is PG&E, AT&T relocation costs that were not estimated comprehensively enough or sufficient funds. We've had bids returned and those have been increased, so therefore we've had to increase it by 350 million. That represents 1.8 billion out of the 2.8, basically 63% of the increase has occurred by these main drivers. This is a estimate that if you look at is not, at this stage, plus or minus. On average, a number of the items that we've undertaken are probably minus 5%, plus 15% tolerance. On some of them, because of the packages in the Central Valley, the future packages, we would be looking at minus 15% to plus 30% because they're in the future. So this is what I consider a reasonable baseline number. It is not aggressive that it will not be have a chance of being achieved, and it's not over excessive that we built so much float and number into it that we can easily achieve it. We will have to work hard as an entity to deliver this number, and certainly there are still ongoing challenges, but as you can see from the statement there, we will continuously work to reduce the number. We are taking that contingency number of 600 million that's been established by taking out what we call a haircut, a reduction of all the future work packages by reducing it by 10%. So we created a contingency by actually targeting lower costs to drive down this budget as best we can.
Okay. I think we'll probably have some questions here from the board colleagues. Questions for Mr. Hill? Director Miller?
Can you hear me? I just wanted you to explain for the public on page, your slide 1, slide, the 2016 BP total, what that indicates and why it's not applicable for your purposes.
Well, it is relevant in the sense of the 2016 was the business plan established at that point. We have taken those numbers, we've done, as I said, bottom up, but also a top-down assessment, work undertaken to date, and come up with a new estimate based on current, 1, experience, 2, performance, 3, likely outcome cost. We looked at the schedule, we looked at the scope details of what's included, so we have a comprehensive package now of scope, schedule, risk, cost developments, and that's where now we come up with the estimate to complete.
So that number was just a number that was in the business plan for that segment, is that right?
The terminology, just a number, no. You could say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I do. Do you have, so,
Pull the microphone close.
a little bit better.
Okay.
Mr. Hill, can you restate the method you used to arrive at the contingency? I didn't follow that. You reduced future costs and shifted the cost savings forward.
We've got a number of ways of establishing the contingency. We've gone through the scope, the schedules, we've looked at the outturn cost, and we've come up with a number for contingency. We've also looked at the future packages to be delivered and basically said for all future work, in order to be aggressive and to make sure those packages are brought in on, but hopefully below the current numbers that we have in our plan, that we've taken a 10% slice across those and created a contingency. So basically, it's a target cost. We've set ourselves, and we'll set ourselves a target cost for delivering the future work. And in doing so, we've established a contingency pot that will be controlled and only executed under authority, delegation authority.
So that's what I thought you said the first time, so I have a follow-up question. Given the large projected increase that you're presenting to us today, do you think it makes sense to assume that if the costs that were estimated and projected in the future are going to go down?
I would suggest that we must work to reduce those costs as much as we possibly can by putting in a target element. I think that helps us manage aggressively those packages. We've taken a number of items of design, value engineering, value management, new solutions, lessons learned, procurement methods, etc. I think we have to work very hard and will to bring those down. From my experience, I think if you set a number, people work to that number, absolute, and the chances then you have of going over it. Whereas if we bring in very aggressively a target below, we work hard to achieve that number rather than a higher number.
So thank you. Just one more comment. Okay. So, Mr. Hill, I appreciate you bringing forward this information. Today's the first time I've had a chance to see it, so it's going to take me a little while to digest it. What I would ask of the chair is that we spend some time to dig in and look at these numbers in the near future to try to have a better understanding of the categories that were presented on these two slides.
I think that's very appropriate, Director Pascat, and I also think, given our earlier action this morning, this should really be front and center for one of the very first things that the new CEO sinks his teeth into. I also appreciate Mr. Hill saying that this is his best professional estimate, recognizing that there are puts and takes on this, but I think it's always good with the new leadership to bring a fresh perspective to see what we can do to aggressively manage this, both to make sure that the numbers don't go any higher than this and to drive these numbers down. So I think that your suggestion that the board delve further into this, maybe I know you've been an advocate of board workshops or things when we have the opportunity to really do that. We'll go forward with that. Director Moore.
I just wanted to reiterate that the board workshop, I know Director Shanks is no longer here, but I believe my colleagues, we would really benefit by something like that, where we spend some time understanding numbers, projections, and how you arrived at this with our new CEO on board. So I would look to staff to help us schedule maybe a day long, or the chair, however that's appropriate.
I'll work with staff on that.
Thank you.
We'd be delighted to show you all the backup we have.
Director Camacho.
Roy, realizing you've only been here less than a year, and inherited this the issue of budget and where we are in terms of progress. The RDP was contracted to build a system on time and within budget, and we failed in both regards. Certainly, there are a lot of mitigating circumstances. I understand that. And as a board member, with the rest of the board, we were just informed of this morning. It's horrifying when we look at the amount of money that we're going to have to reinvest into this to make this program work. How do we ensure the public that we're going to do a better job as monitoring spending their dollars in a way that gives them the biggest bang for their buck?
There's several items I would need to cover on this. One is obviously having this detailed estimate that has detailed scope, detailed schedule, detailed risk analysis, allows us to, the word I use, a baseline program. You establish information and you manage against that information, and to do that is absolutely essential. I think we have now the level of detail that will be fundamentally what we have to monitor and manage against on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So that is fundamentally the first step, is to manage against realistic information. We have an amazing amount, I hate to say it, it's a difficult thing to say positively, but we have lessons learned. The right-of-way experience, the third-party agreements that we've had established, how we've procured things, the experience we've gained now, we must make sure is implemented in every future package going forward. We have implemented stronger management. Joe Cazares, who is here to present the next item, we have brought in at least 6 new senior managers into the construction arm and are bringing in more people to manage construction. And that is a joint effort between ourselves and the authority, etc. We are also looking at how we have better approvals, governance, how we sign off design variations, ATCs. And as you know from other board papers that we're looking at the whole management process from design build contractor right through to ourselves and how we sign things off. So there is not one single thing, and if I could sit here and say, or stand here and say, look, this is it, this is the panacea, this is it, this will be great, I would give that to you gladly. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, there is a lot of items we have to address. The governance, the organisation which we've taken in place with the control, the Programme Delivery Committee, the Business Oversight Committee is the start of that journey going forward to maturity. So I look at it now and say I am far, far more comfortable and confident that we are putting steps in place to manage the budgets, schedules going forward.
I think the board, through this, if we have this retreat, will review how we do business and how we manage these projects better, and even to the extent who we have managing them. Yeah. I've in the construction industry, and I realize that if we don't get the desired results by the way we're doing things, we have to do something different. And I want you to really think about that, because we owe a fiduciary responsibility to the state, to the general public, to ourselves to do a better job.
Yeah. And part of the process we've done to identify the cost estimate, even in the Central Valley, has been to identify those improvements. And whether it's organisation, whether it's process, whether it's design, specification levels, etc. That's what we've addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director. Other questions or comments for Mr. Hill? Seeing none, let me just turn to a couple on myself. In addition to this, obviously we need to look at how these cost increases go through to the rest of the system. I think we're doing that as part of the business plan work. Is that that's your understanding, Mr.
That's correct. Yes, we're looking at costs for the whole program.
So let me just make a couple of remarks here. First of all, obviously, we would prefer a different assessment at this point, but our first responsibility is to the first responsibility of the staff to this board, and our first responsibility to the public, is to be transparent and forthright about where we see things. So, Mr. Hill, we brought you in from your experience building high-speed rail in the UK. I think you've been an extremely positive addition to the organization, and frankly, this baseline assessment was something that probably should have been done all along. So I'm glad we're doing it now. Without commenting on the numbers themselves, because I think my colleagues have pointed out that the board wants the opportunity to delve further into the methodologies and the assumptions that went into these numbers, and that's appropriate. But just saying in general, on the good news side, I guess, or on the positive side, I don't think it's good news. On the positive side, from what you're saying, some 2/3 of these cost drivers were risk factors that we identified in 2016 in our report to the legislature. Now, on the not positive side, we didn't accurately forecast what the magnitude of those risk factors was going to be, but I think we clearly had them in our sights that these were things that were problematic. Right-of-way acquisition, both because of the pressure to get the project underway because of the statutory deadline for stimulus money funding, litigation that in fact did have the damaging effect of forcing us to go back and redo 500 appraisals. So right-of-way has continued to be a problem, but I think as we look to the future, we're not going to start segments without having right-of-way in hand. So that is, as you said, a lesson learned, or maybe a situation that we found ourselves in that we really couldn't do much about. Alignment issues that trigger the need for railroad intrusion barriers. I mean, I think these are lessons learned of things that we can do something about. And frankly, we need to get our arms around this third-party and utility relocation issue, because that is something that's going to exist across the entire project. Any place we build, there are going to be utilities and so forth. But I do think that we have learned that even some things that look like attractive alternatives, the alternative technical concepts, for example, in CP23, had implications for utility relocation that perhaps were not fully thought through and understood. So, look, the numbers are going to be what the numbers are going to be. I think that we've got to continue to actively manage this program. Actually, let me amend that. We've got to enhance active management of this program. We are moving into the new year with a new leadership team, and I think that will be important as we do that. And it'll be important for us to more fully understand these numbers. This is a very big and complex project. I think the public probably understands that there are going to be times like this where we have to come in and say some things are difficult. What they want to see from us is both honesty and our absolute commitment to managing this thing to protect every dollar that we can. So we'll head into the new year with that. With that, yes, Ms. Pesky, you have a delayed reaction.
It happens rarely. May I ask one more?
Yeah, of course, please.
Okay. Mr. Hill, there were these risks that represent 60% of the increase. What's the remainder of that? What's the other $1 billion?
A number of those include probably the biggest one that's beyond that now is the tracking system increases. It's on the first slide. They're probably the area that we need to address, but that's caused the
largest one for you.
And that's basically, we've looked at benchmarking the outturn of other high-speed rail cost, program cost, and looked at it, and those two items have gone up. So that's probably the bulk of the next level.
Okay, so as I listen to the conversation, I and internalizing these numbers would say that there are numbers that are being presented to us today, and they were risks that were identified, but I would hope that there would be mitigation plans presented for those risks going forward, not that that we accept an increase knowing there were risks. I think that's irresponsible. And sort of wait to see if there's an opportunity to bring this number down.
We will work to bring this number down aggressively. That is what we've got to do. The risk, there are certainly within the packages that are going forward, we will learn the process of making sure that we don't repeat the assumptions perhaps we made. I think in fairness, if asked, was it estimates that were the issue, or was it the fact that actually things happen, and believe it or not, a lot of bad things happened, and accumulatively this has caused the problem. Right away, the third parties, the railroad, the worst case scenario has happened, probably the decision taken on how to approach it, and that's what we need to learn more than the items.
Right, and you're committed to looking at mitigation strategies.
Yes, absolutely.
For those worst case scenarios.
Absolutely. We've got a whole list of detailed mitigations, how we're addressing things, how we can reduce things going forward. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just close on this based on what Director Pasquette just said. Listening to her, I mean, it seems to me that what we need to articulate to the public is that there will be a budget for this program. The budget will be based on our realistic assessment of things that it could cost, but then there will be a target, which will be below the budget, of what we're going to try to drive to. So on the one hand, we're being honest and open about what it could be, and on the other, our responsibility is to do everything we can to manage to a target that's below that. And I think if that's how we approach this program, that's the appropriate way.
And again, from my experience, one day we will unfortunately have a major increase in cost on one item. We will discover it. It's what I call, the funnel of things happening. Hopefully the next day we will drive a major cost saving, and these will level out at the right level that we've now established. So this is where I genuinely believe we are at the point now of being able to have major hits. If they occur, they will occur on this program. I always say until 2 years after the contract's finished, we will get that variation. But we'll drive down these items, these cost factors, to reduce it to the minimum. Yes.
Next meeting, you'll have $2 billion savings.
I'll be here if we do.
As long as the next
we
meeting,
look forward to the next meeting.
Right. As long as the next meeting is far enough in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hill, I know that you had a number of staff people who worked with you on this, and so for better or for worse, convey our thanks to them for a lot of hard work.
It was certainly a team effort. Thank you.
Okay. And then Mr. Caceres, I'm going to suggest that given some of the questions that came from the board about getting a deeper look, a deeper dive into some of this, that we hold off on the specific contract amendment today and roll that over to the next month as part of that bigger conversation. Okay.